Riah Phiyega is expected to wrap up its final arguments at the Classen Board of Inquiry in Pretoria today. Evidence leaders there have accused Phiyega of violating the country's constitution and breaching her oath of office. They believe she should be held responsible for the deaths of 34 miners who were shot by police in August 2012 during a strike at Lonmin's platinum mine in Marikana. The evidence leaders are calling for her removal as the police boss. Phiyega's team has stressed that it's important to distinguish whether events at Marikana were under her control or that of Northwest Provincial Commissioner General Zukiswa Mbombo, who has since retired. Patricia Visagie has been tracking the Classen inquiry fast from the outset. We're live to her in Pretoria now. Good afternoon, Patricia. Closing arguments unfolding today.
Good afternoon. In fact, I think it's correct to put it that the Classen Board of Inquiry has officially wrapped up here in Centurion. Of course, we saw the defense today putting their closing arguments forward. And basically, in a nutshell, what they ended up calling for is that all findings or allegations against suspended Police Commissioner Riah Phiyega be withdrawn. They're calling for her total acquittal. We saw, of course, evidence leaders going through a whole lot of, a legal jargon that they try to string together to prove their case in defense of the suspended police commissioner. So now we're waiting, of course, for the evidence leaders to submit their replies, which they will be submitting on the 15th of June. But I think let's speak to William Baloyi. He is the spokesperson for the inquiry. Mr. Baloyi, just take us through all the proceedings since the beginning of this board of inquiry. Has everything gone smoothly?
Today marks the end of this process of the public hearings, and all the teams, both the defense and the evidence leaders, have made their submissions, and they have also given oral arguments, including the third parties who applied and were admitted as third parties. But now what is left is for the board to compile a report which must be compiled within a 2 months period. However, today there was also an indication that there is a need for supplementary answering submissions, which of course the judge have granted, that they can do their supplementary submissions, which of course he has also given them the time frame of the 15th, and from there on then it will be the final step of the inquiry, which will be the compilation of the report. And according to the South African Police Act, the report has people that have to be given this particular report. But as we are aware that this was more of an employer-employee kind of a session, therefore the president will be given the report, but also the involved parties will be given the report. But it's up to the president to then decide what to do with that report, based also on the recommendations that will be within that report.
Now, throughout the inquiry sittings, we saw a lot of delays. Can you maybe in a nutshell just tell us why were there so many delays?
Actually, when we started, we put 5 weeks for arguments. However, it took only 4 days, and then that depends solely on the defense and the evidence teams, and then we had to give them enough time to come for the closing arguments, which then we had to take close to 4 weeks. That's why we had to now come and do the closing arguments on the very last week.
Behind the scenes, were all the parties happy with how proceedings went?
Up to thus far, with the nature of inquiries of this nature, I think one can safely say that we didn't have any major hiccups. The parties were given the space and all the resources that they needed to do their work, and that's why we were able to finish right on the 5 weeks that we put for ourselves.
Apart from the delays, were there any other challenges?
No, not to mention any that we experienced, except that I can indicate that on the last 3 days, yes, there was a need for space as the affected families were here and the representatives of AMCU were here, and unfortunately the venue could accommodate only a specific number. We had to unfortunately request the others to stay in their buses, and those I think was the only challenge that we had. But obviously they did understand that yes, the space can only take a certain number.
All right, thank you so much. Of course, that is William Baloyi, who is the spokesperson of the Classen Board of Inquiry here in Centurion, that has concluded today. And of course, as you have heard, now the parties have about 2 months to get their answers in terms of, the findings of this inquiry, whether suspended Police Commissioner Riah Phiyega is fit to hold office or not. We expect Judge Classen to submit his findings and recommendations to President Jacob Zuma by end of August, and of course then it will be the President's prerogative to decide what the future holds for the suspended Police Commissioner Riah Phiyega.
Patricia Visagie at the Classen Board of Inquiry underway in Pretoria. Thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk. Business News.